I didn't realize that the clothes inside were worn by her husband when he was alive, and she was planning to burn them at the grave. The money stored here was their family's entire savings." After hearing this, I was instantly scared and broke out in a sweat. I had actually worn a dead person's clothes. Was the person I saw in the mirror really her husband's ghost? From that moment on, I never dared to pick up anything again. Chapter 76. Would you be willing? They had been in love for 3 years, although they had never met, yet their feelings were stronger than those of a couple married for 10 years. However, each time the woman suggested meeting, the man would always show a troubled expression and gently refuse. But today the woman secretly crossed 12 provinces to arrive at his building, wanting to surprise him during her business trip. Coincidentally, when she made the call, the man was right in front of her. After confirming it was him, she quietly approached and tapped him on the shoulder. To her shock, when the man turned around, he had a look of terror on his face. The woman instinctively froze for a moment, and the next second the man's head transformed into that of a lion. But the woman let out a heart-wrenching scream before fainting. When she woke up again, she found herself lying in a hospital bed. Later, she heard from a nurse that a man had hurriedly brought her in and then disappeared. When the woman was discharged and returned home, she received a video message from the man, who apologized to her and revealed his strange illness. It turned out that whenever she got close to someone she liked, she would turn into a thin person, and she still couldn't recover. She had planned to remain single for life, but unexpectedly met a woman on a dating site. Her friends urged her to give it a try. Perhaps it would lead to a turning point. Maybe it was destiny that brought the woman into her life. She realized she had completely fallen in love with a woman, and while she had been trying to find a cure for this strange affliction, it wasn't until that day when the woman appeared that she understood all her efforts were in vain. To avoid causing the woman distress, she decided to step back, knowing that the days ahead would be painful, but for the sake of her beloved, she had no regrets. When the woman finished watching the video, she was already in tears. Later, to seek treatment for the man, she came to the Life Research Institute, but this illness was rare and had no cure. However, there was a potion that could turn her into a monster in front of others, while restoring her normal self in front of her beloved, and there was also another. She could only choose one of the two potions, and once used, she couldn't change her mind. The woman felt a dull expression on her face. After returning home, she tried to contact the man, but found she couldn't get through. It was clear he was determined to break up with her. Just then she heard a familiar voice, but when she looked in the direction of the sound, it wasn't the man. At that moment, all her memories of him flooded back, and she realized she couldn't live without him. So she gritted her teeth and desperately ran towards the Research Institute, choosing to be brave for love this time. In the end, she chose the potion that. Chapter 77. This is not an ordinary stool, as its wood color resembles flesh smooth like human skin. Lai Zhangping found it quite strange and approached to touch it, but as soon as he did, the stool sprang to life and began to bounce away, and even more oddly it dove into the wall and vanished. Lai Zhangping thought his home was haunted by a spirit, so he hurriedly invited an old Taoist priest from Beiyan Temple to investigate. After examining the courtyard, the old priest reassured Lai Zhangping that there was no need to worry, saying it was a harmless household spirit that could guard the home, but would occasionally play tricks, so Lai didn't take it to heart. Until the teacher was invited into the house, a significant event finally occurred. Mr. Wan was not only talented in appearance, but also well educated. However, he had a weakness for women. Gradually, he began to make advances on the maid, Mei Zhang. One day, after being forcibly assaulted by him, Mei Zhang ran away in tears, hiding in a secluded corner, heartbroken and filled with endless grievance. She contemplated ending her own life, but just as she was about to jump, a stick unexpectedly stopped her. After pulling her back to the shore, the stick bounced away and disappeared into the wall, leaving behind one sentence: "Don't worry, I'll teach her a lesson." Mr. Wan placed the coffin on two benches, and as he gazed at the little people, he felt not fear, but rather amusement. Soon another group of little people arrived, both men and women, all dressed in mourning attire, kneeling before the coffin and starting to wail loudly. Their cries were filled with endless sorrow, yet Mr. Wang felt uneasy, and before long he was overwhelmed and collapsed onto the bench. He only slowly awoke when daylight broke, but the little people and the coffin had vanished. However, from that day on, Mr. Wan was troubled by the haunting sound of their mourning cries in his ears. With no other choice, I had to resign, but just a few days after leaving the Lai residence, I suddenly passed away. Chapter 78. This boy is too bad. This little boy is truly cold-blooded, pushing his own grandmother into the well, standing by the edge with a sinister expression, quietly watching her struggle to survive in the water, indifferent to her cries for help, even smiling chillingly. He waited until Grandma was completely drowned before he pretended to cry and ran home to tell Mom that Grandma had fallen into the well. When Grandma was pulled out, the old lady was already completely dead, and the whole family was heartbroken and crying, but he secretly revealed a triumphant smile, for his revenge had just begun. Just a few days after Grandma passed away, Grandpa was feeding the horse when he quietly tied a knot in the horse's rope, then climbed onto the cart and slipped the noose over Grandpa's head. The grandfather feeding the horses thought it was his grandson playing tricks, just about to scold him for being disrespectful, but unexpectedly Kingshan picked up the whip and struck the horse's rear fiercely. The horse got scared and immediately took off running, but unexpectedly the other end of the rope was tied to its leg, and before Grandpa could react, he was dragged along by the horse speeding towards the door. The Kingshan sword plan succeeded once again, filling him with a sense of pride. After a while, he pretended to go home to report the news as he did last time. However, by the time Lai Zhangping and his wife arrived, the old man had already died in the fields, and even worse, half of his body had been ground away. Lai Zhangping couldn't handle the shock of his parents' consecutive tragic deaths and fell ill. In desperation, he had to let his wife handle the funeral arrangements, but on the very first night of her efforts, suddenly a soft sound of footsteps came from behind. Turning around, it was my son Kingshan. Just as my wife was puzzled about why our son was here, Kingshan spoke in a tone that seemed mature for his age. "Do you know why they died? Because you are all family of Lai Zhangping, and the family of Lai Zhangping must die." After saying that, he raised the sharp knife in his hand and fiercely stabbed toward his mother, who reacted quickly and immediately dodged to the side. Then Kingshan stabbed the coffin board with a knife, and his mother couldn't understand what had happened to her son, but unexpectedly he continued to speak. "Actually, I am not your son, Kingshan. I am Wang Long from my previous life, and I have come back specifically for revenge. Your whole family will die." He raised the sharp knife again, but this time it stopped mid-air, and then he said, "Since you gave me life and raised me, I can spare you, but I want you to know who I am." He then recounted his past life, saying he lived before the liberation, named Wang Long, and his family of four originally lived and struggled. But that day, while the family was having dinner, they suddenly heard someone kicking the door, and Wang Long immediately had bad feeling. Due to frequent bandit raids lately, sure enough, the sound of kicking at the door grew louder, and before Wang Long could reach the entrance, the door was violently kicked open. Then a group of bandits walked in, led by a notorious figure known as Song Rentu, famous for his brutality and ruthlessness. Frightened, Wang Long immediately turned around to run back, but was shot in the leg by Song Ren. The family rushed out upon hearing gunshots, only to see a group of bandits suddenly appear in the house, and Wang Long was lying on the ground, his legs covered in blood. The old man's son was injured and immediately quit, grabbing a wooden stick to fight the bandits. Song Rentu casually fired another shot, and the old man's head immediately burst open, leaving the family heartbroken and in anguish. Ki Songren, however, showed no mercy and ordered his subordinates to quickly loot the money and grain, emptying Wan Long's house of all valuables. As they prepared to rob the next place, Wan Long unexpectedly muttered through gritted teeth, "Bandits, wait for me. Wan Long, will definitely seek revenge on you, very unfortunately." Song Rentu happened to hear the words "take revenge," so he paused with great interest. He glared at Wang Long with malice, and then several gunshots rang out again. Moments later, Wang Long's family of 4 was found dead, and the bandits had already killed mercilessly. At this moment, it was as if they had killed a few chickens and ducks, laughing heartlessly as they left. After telling all this, Kingshan told his mother that he was the Wang Long from his previous life. Lai Zhangping was the reincarnation of Song Rentu in his past life. Heaven has a cycle, and in this life, the heavens finally gave him a chance for revenge. Now, Lai Zhangping has felt the pain of losing his family, and next, he is about to end his life. So he grabbed a knife and ran towards Lai Zhangping's room. When Mom saw this, she immediately followed. At this moment, Lai Zhangping was still bedridden, while Kingshan raised the sharp knife, ready to strike. However, Lai Zhangping was finally awakened by his wife's screams, and as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw his son about to stab him with a knife. At this moment, he could no longer escape, as King Shan stabbed him in the back with a blade, followed by another cut across his abdomen. Lai Zhangping quickly used both hands to resist, and fortunately, with his wife's assistance, he managed to seize the sharp knife from Kingshan's hand. Although Kingshan has lost his weapon, he still vows to fight Lai Zhangping to the end. Lai Zhangping accidentally stabbed Kingshan with the knife, and immediately Kingshan fell to the ground, covered in blood. But when Lai Zhangping reported to the police, they did not believe the story he told, thinking it was a bizarre script lie. However, Zhang Long felt that this kind of plot was not something Lai Zhangping was capable of creating. Zhang Long prepared to go to the hospital to see Lai Kingshan, who had already been diagnosed as mentally ill. Kingshan's mother is secretly crying outside the hospital room. What was once a happy family is now torn apart. Lai Zhangping is about to face imprisonment, and Kingshan's mother finally realizes the truth. No wonder this child has always had a look of resentment towards Lai Zhangping since birth. Even now that he is tied to the bed, he is still shouting loudly for revenge. That expression is not something a 7-year-old child should have. Zhang Long also suspected that perhaps reincarnation really exists, but he couldn't write it that way in secret. Finally, Lai Zhangping was sentenced to 3 years in prison for the crime of causing injury resulting in death. Lai Kingshan unexpectedly escaped after spending 2 years in the mental hospital. Lai Zhangping mysteriously died in prison, and the case became an unsolved mystery. Chapter 79, 18 Floors. 18 is a sacred number in China, but do you know why many people avoid choosing an 18th floor apartment? In folklore, it is said that the 18th floor is considered unlucky. It's because when you walk down from the 18th floor, you might just end up in hell. This incident occurred in the year Lai Zhangping graduated from university. The level of strangeness may exceed your understanding. I suggest tagging your friends to watch together. That year, Lai Zhangping graduated from university and got a job as an administrative assistant. He thought that his outstanding resume would earn him the company's favor. I didn't expect that being an administrative assistant would be a job for doing odds and ends. Everyone in the company, except for the cleaning staff, can point fingers at Lai Zhangping. What frustrated Lai Zhangping even more was that he could only accept it silently. In today's work environment, where everyone is caught in the rat race, Lai Zhangping almost works overtime until midnight every day. That night, Lai Zhangping felt very uncomfortable after transforming into a foreigner. After taking the cold medicine, I unknowingly fell asleep on the table. I don't know how long I've been asleep. Lai Zhangping was suddenly wakened by a knock at the door. He thought the leader had returned. One clever person stood up from their workstation. After looking around, no one was found coming in. Only the company door that is slowly closing indicates that someone had indeed pushed it open moments ago. Lai Zhangping also considered the possibility that it was the wind, but he quickly dismissed this speculation, because the company's entrance is made of tempered glass. Don't say it's the wind blowing. It takes effort for everyone to pull it open. Lai Zhangping calmed himself inwardly. I went to the water cooler to get a cup of water to calm my nerves. He didn't even finish his glass of water. Suddenly it became dark behind me. Suddenly, two lights on the ceiling chandelier went out for no reason. Lai Zhangping felt a shiver run down his spine. This familiar light extinguishing segment. It was exactly like a scene from a horror movie encountering a ghost. The next second, before Lai Zhangping could react, the lights on the ceiling suddenly went out with a bang. The entire company fell into chaos. In the pitch-black darkness where one can't see their own hand, Lai Zhangping boldly speculated that it might just be a power outage. But when he returned to his workstation, he found the computer screen still lit. It's all just garbled text on the computer screen. At that moment, Lai Zhangping's mental defenses completely collapsed. Scared, my bladder almost burst. I have no idea what exactly happened. Lai Zhangping became more and more afraid. He ran outside with his legs. Lai Zhangping rushed to the elevator, frantically pressing the elevator button. I feel like staying any longer would be dangerous. He stared at the elevator floor indicator light. I eagerly hope to get to the first floor soon. It seems like I was startled just now. At this moment, the entire elevator was filled with Lai Zhangping's rapid breathing and heartbeat. But what you fear is what will come. The elevator light suddenly flickered and went out. Lai Zhangping instinctively pressed his back against the side of the elevator. I have already started to mentally prepare myself for the fall. Fortunately, it was just a false alarm. The elevator light flickered and then turned back on. With a ding, the elevator finally reached the first floor. Before the elevator doors fully opened, Lai Zhangping dashed out, finally back on solid ground. It should be safe now. At that moment, Lai Zhangping was so frightened that he just kept his head down and ran forward. It wasn't until he came to his senses that he noticed something was off around him. At this moment, what lay before him was not the familiar first-floor lobby, but a vast expanse of barren red land. Some places are still emitting steam. Lai Zhangping stood frozen in place. The rapid heartbeat thumped in the chest. Just at the moment when Lai Zhangping was lost in thought, as the elevator doors closed, Lai Zhangping was plunged into darkness. The next second, a wave of dampness rose from beneath his feet. Lai Zhangping looked down, only to find myself stepping on the damp mud. There was even a faint smell of dampness and decay. By this time, Lai Zhangping's mind is completely overloaded. He simply couldn't understand what was happening now. At the moment when Lai Zhangping was at a loss, Suddenly I found two people in front of me. Lai Zhangping felt as if he had received a great pardon, hurried over to inquire about the situation. But once you see the person's true face, Lai Zhangping was so scared he nearly fainted. The people before me all had ashen faces, their eyes rolled back. It looks just like the ghosts in horror movies. It seems to have sensed the presence of the living. More and more ghosts gathered around Lai Zhangping from the darkness. They surrounded Lai Zhangping. Ask him why he still comes out in a panic after losing the sheet. Lai Zhangping was surrounded with no way to escape. I already understand in my heart that I have been infected by the ghostly pig, just as Lai Zhangping was about to be consumed by the ghost. Suddenly his eyes lit up. I found that those ghosts have all disappeared, but the colleague is pulling on themselves. At that moment, Lai Zhangping realized, I am in the company's office, and the sky is already bright. Colleagues noticed that Lai Zhangping looked unwell. Let him hurry to the bathroom to wash his face and tidy up. Don't let the boss see, or you'll get an IP. Lai Zhangping was desperately washing his face in the bathroom. I also let out a sigh of relief. It turns out that I was just dreaming, just as Lai Zhangping was cleaning himself in front of the mirror. The cleaning lady outside suddenly burst into a string of curses. Someone made a mess with mud all over the ground. Hearing this, Lai Zhangping suddenly turned around. He noticed a trail of muddy footprints behind him. It was left behind by myself, looking at those muddy footprints. Lai Zhangping found himself lost in confusion once again. Could it be that everything I've experienced is not a dream? Eighth historical tale, University Supernatural Events. This is a supernatural event that took place at a university in Henan, once the psychological shadow of countless university students. The level of strangeness in this matter may exceed your imagination. Timid friends, please squat in the bathroom and watch slowly. The story takes place at a university in Henan. It hasn't been long since the new semester started. Suddenly, several ambulances and police cars arrived at the school. It was only after understanding that I realized a student had committed suicide by jumping off a building, and it is said that it was caused by being possessed. Such things aren't new in college. Strangely, the deceased's behavior before jumping was quite odd. The principal introduced them while leading the two to the dormitory where the incident occurred. Later, the principal called in the two roommates of the deceased. After inquiring, one student recounted the events leading up to the deceased's leap from the building. That night, the three of them had just finished showering and returned to the dormitory. At first, they were chatting and laughing, telling jokes. But at that moment, something strange happened. Lai Zhangping, who had been laughing heartily just moments ago, suddenly lowered his head. The expression instantly turned ominous. The classmates by the side quickly approached to ask what was wrong. But Lai Zhangping stared fiercely at the two people. They had been classmates for many years. But I have never seen Lai Zhangping like this. The two intended to kindly continue their inquiries. Little did anyone know Lai Zhangping went completely insane. A continuous roar was coming from his mouth. This scared both of them. However, the two of them did not take this matter to heart. I thought Lai Zhangping might be facing difficulties in his relationships or studies. So it was just a way to vent my bad mood. Lai Zhangping calmed down after a while and walked out of the dormitory. However, his expression was unusually cold, as if he had transformed into a different person. Slowly, it was quickly approaching 10:30 at night. The two of them saw he hadn't returned yet, so they went to sleep first. Who knew it was around 12 o'clock? Suddenly, a strange sound came from somewhere. Lai Zhangping returned without anyone noticing when he had come back, and was sitting on the bed, gesturing with their hands. It's like talking to someone. Soon another roommate was also awakened. At that moment, Lai Zhongbing suddenly let out a sharp scream and tightly grasped his own neck. He squeezed very tightly. He turned his face completely pale from holding his breath. It's suffocating. Seeing this, the two quickly stepped forward to pull them apart. But strangely, at this moment, Lai Zhongbing's strength became exceptionally great. They exerted immense effort to pull his hand away. Then they hurriedly tied him to the bed with cloth strips and belts. But neither of them has experienced anything like this before, so they hurriedly ran out to call for help. It was already late at night. They can only call the dormitory manager Grandpa. But when a few people returned, they saw an even more bizarre scene. Lai Zhongbing had already gotten out of bed. In theory, it would be very difficult for him to move being tied from head to toe. But at this moment, it felt as if a strange force was pulling him. He had already been so scared that he wet his pants. At the same time, it seemed to be in great fear while resisting that power. But that power was incredibly strong. Soon they dragged Lai Zhongbing to the window. At this moment, a few people finally reacted. Hurriedly rushed to the window to try to stop him. But it was too late. Lai Zhongbing was pulled by that force and crashed through the window. The whole body suddenly fell from the upstairs. By the time the two reached the window, it was already too late. Lai Zhongbing's head hit the ground, and his brain matter splattered out. The two roommates and the dormitory supervisor came back to their senses. Thinking of the scene of Lai Zhongbing's death, I can't help but recall. The two of them remained silent after hearing it, because these two are the special liquor team that specifically handles shower incidents. But the disciple beside him thought for a long time and still couldn't figure it out. So the master had him stand in the corridor to feel it out. At that moment, he felt a gust of wind, and the wind was unusually cold. Later, after analysis by the two, this school is built in a remote and desolate area. The negative energy from various places gathers here. Later, the school erected a statue in the hallway. Since then, the school has truly become peaceful. Chapter 81. This boy is a bit unfortunate. The boy could only sleep in a coffin from the moment he was born, because his father said this was the only way he could survive. It turns out his father is a yin-yang master, but he and the boy were not biological father and son. Many years ago, their village experienced a great flood, causing many villagers to become displaced along with the people. But suddenly a coffin was swept out in the flood, and inside the coffin was a live eagle crying loudly. Kind-hearted Lai Zhongbing approached to check after hearing the cries. But when he walked in front of the mirror, he was instantly stunned, because there was actually a corpse dressed in a training outfit inside the coffin. The red infant still has a slightly moist umbilical cord visible. It turned out he was actually a child of a teacher just born not long ago. Lai Zhongbing was shocked but also felt a pang of pity. So they decided to raise him to adulthood. But his way of raising children is quite special. He was only allowed to sleep in a coffin from a young age, and they didn't give the child any name. Lai Zhongbing, the yin-yang master, turns out to be. It was once predicted that this child should not have been alive in this world. The reason he didn't give the child a name, it is to prevent being discovered by the soul snatcher's dark thoughts. Lai Zhongbing usually made a living doing odd jobs. Although life is poor, it can barely be managed, but it's still passable. That's it. This nameless child slept in the coffin for 15 years. But because of this, the children in the village saw him as a monster. They also gave him the nickname Little Coffin. And the little coffin was also very confused. Why those who raise us? Not allowing myself to call him father, but rather master. although he knew his master wanted him to sleep in the coffin. It was to save his life, but he was extremely disgusted by the coffin he had slept in for 15 years. So that day he greeted his master and went out. He ran to an abandoned house behind the village. "Get ready to spend the night in there tonight. Let's see if we can fight against that so-called fate." But he had just comfortably settled down in this unfamiliar place. Suddenly a light chilly rain started to fall outside. A loud bang echoed through the sky. Countless stones and rubble came crashing down on him. Originally, this abandoned house was on the verge of collapsing, with the heavy rain washing over it. Just now, a thunderclap shook the entire roof down. Heavy wooden beams and bricks all fell on him. He was pinned down, gasping for breath and unable to move, just when he thought he was surely going to die. At the moment of regret, I saw my master. I heard master choking back his urgency. "Don't be afraid, child. Dad is here to save you." When the small coffin woke up again, I felt excruciating pain all over my body. At that moment, he realized he was wrapped up like a zombie, then lay in the coffin for half a year before slowly recovering. During this time, he also resigned himself to his fate. I really am like what master said. Only by sleeping in a coffin can one survive. However, until this day, the master suddenly handed him a small coffin. "Tell him that he doesn't have to sleep in a coffin anymore to stay alive. But I have to carry this small coffin with me." And he also reminded him that he could only make a living among the parrots from now on. "That means I can only work in industries related to funerals and the deceased." There is a wooden figure inside the small coffin. Lai Zhangping instructed Zhao Guankai to regularly drip a drop of his stasis blood inside. Then Lai Zhangping said again, "Chad," just as Lai Zhangping said. He died 2 months later. After the small coffin buried his father, he started a business dealing with the dead, leaning against a corpse, struggling to survive through hardships. One time, while he was helping a family carry a corpse, he encountered something strange. The old mother of that household is said to have died from illness. Though the body appears emaciated, it feels unusually heavy when you carry it on your back. Look again at the shadow on the ground. The shadow surprisingly revealed a pair of resentful eyes. The little coffin knew this matter was not simple. This inevitably made me think of some unpleasant things. I secretly took a glance at the chubby guy following behind. I just saw the impatient expression on the fat guy's face. At this moment, he already understood in his heart. Then they leaned the old lady's body against the wall. The fat man instantly became angry upon seeing this, cursing continuously in his mouth. However, the small coffin questioned the fat man. Did he cause the old lady's death? That chubby guy suddenly became very tense at a glance. Then, sweating profusely, he said, "Don't talk nonsense. What evidence do you have to make such baseless claims?" But the little coffin said it was your mother's vengeful spirit that told me. It's you who killed her. The argument between the two immediately attracted the villagers who came for the tattoo. The villagers were whispering and pointing at each other. They say this guy usually abuses the elderly. There is no sign of filial piety at all. At that moment, a person emerged from the crowd, directly addressing the fat man's problem. He grabbed the fat man angrily. "I just saw the old lady's body. She had many chewed pieces of cotton stuck between her teeth. You must have starved her to death." Upon hearing this, the villagers were all greatly shocked. A few young men are strong. Immediately went forward to subdue that fat guy and escorted him to the police station. Episode 82, Do Not Believe in Shortcuts. Hurriedly rushed to the city center to discuss with the 7 wives. The wives and concubines were very happy to hear this news, but after running out the door, the priest had already vanished. Seeing this, they all accused the wife of neglecting the deity. Not long after, my wife went to the market to buy things. I encountered that Taoist again, so he hurriedly grabbed the Taoist and apologized. He hopes he can revive his family head, but the Taoist said there are regulations in the underworld. To revive the dead, a living person must take their place. I worry that no one in your family is willing to die for others. This is not a sudden departure. Hearing this, the wife invited the deist to return with her to discuss it, and after hearing that the wife had invited the Taoist back, the wives and concubines were all very happy. But when I heard that someone needed to die in place of the rebirth, but no one was willing, they all expressed that being so young, they couldn't possibly die. After a moment of silence, all the wives subtly looked towards the main wife. One death is naturally self-evident. All right, all of you ladies are so young and beautiful. It's truly a pity that they died. I am old and weary, just let me go. So the wife explained to the Taoist, willing to die for my master. The Taoist saw that they had already reached an agreement. Let my wife prepare a place near the market for the ceremony. It is said that 3 days of practice can yield results in 7 days. Then the wife took care of the Taoist at home. Treat each other with courtesy every morning and evening. Then explain the situation to friends and family and pay your respects. Everyone laughed at him for being foolish. There are those who admire and pity him. As he passed by a sacred temple on his way home, he sincerely bowed and prayed to the official holy ground. The old servant will go to the sacred land of death to pray for the master. May the deist assist in successfully bringing the master back to life. Little did they know, as soon as the words fell, a yellow-robed monk suddenly appeared and shouted loudly, "I see you with a face full of demonic energy. Disaster is already upon you. I will save your life. Never let the secret slip." He handed his wife a bag of fruit, and informed to open it at the critical moment. After saying that, he disappeared without a trace. The wife couldn't help but open it out of curiosity. It seems to be 5 golden dragon claws. 3 days later, the Taoist priest had his wife lie opposite the master's coffin, locked the funeral hall door from the outside with a padlock. The Taoist nearby is chanting spells and performing rituals. The wife heard the Taoist inside the house, muttering spells in a low voice. At first, I didn't feel anything unusual, just as the wife was filled with doubt. Suddenly, a noise came from under the bed. 2 dark shadows slowly rose from the ground, with black fur all over, fierce glints in its eyes. They helped the head of the family out of the coffin. The host appeared very weak, although he still has the appearance of the family head. The voice that spoke was that of the Taoist priest. He pointed at his wife and shouted, "Quick, bring me his zindan to eat and sustain my Huinghan." It seems that what the monk said has come true. The 2 ghostly figures approached. Wife trembled as she took out the package from her arms. Suddenly, a dragon claw flew out of the void and transformed into a golden dragon. In an instant, he lifted his wife up to the beam. The 2 little ghosts couldn't reach their wife for a moment. The yellow soul spell has thus failed. Seeing this, the demon and the 2 little ghosts went wild. He suddenly jumped up and reached out to grab his wife. A golden dragon let out a roar. The little ghost was instantly shattered into pieces. Before my wife could finally relax, the demon's true form suddenly burst through the door. All my years of hard work have been destroyed in an instant. Go to hell, old man. At a critical moment, the monk in the yellow robe suddenly appeared, quickly pushed my wife away, The monk brings heavenly punishment to slay the demon Path. Invoke divine power and chant to summon heavenly thunder. The demon was instantly struck down to the ground. Chapter 83. Have you ever had a dream like this? It is said that a deceased person appearing in a dream must have something to convey. For a while my mom frequently had nightmares. The teacher dreamed of my late uncle Lai Zhangping, who had passed away several years ago. The first time I dreamed about it, my mom was also very surprised, because when she was alive our family seldom interacted. We can barely meet twice a year. But she told my mom in a dream to let my aunt out. It was said that she was placed in a coffin even before she died. The fingers were all torn and still couldn't escape from the coffin. She became angrier the more she thought about it, screaming for my mom to make sure my aunt lets her out. This sudden scene startled my mom awake. My dad was also scared silly by my mom's screams. I hurriedly asked my mom what was wrong. My mom said with a cold sweat all over her head. She dreamed of my uncle Lai Zhangping. My dad comforted my mom for a long time before finally getting her to sleep. I didn't expect to just fall asleep. My mom dreamed about Uncle Da again. My mom couldn't dare to sleep all night. My dad noticed that my mom hasn't been eating or sleeping well these past few days. I just wanted her to call Auntie. Let's see if there's anything going on. But my mom is afraid that Auntie will feel sad remembering the past. I really don't want to make this call. Little did I know that when I returned home from school that day, as soon as I opened the door, I saw my aunt sitting in my house. Moreover, the atmosphere at home is a bit strange. They all had worried looks on their faces. Later I found out. Aunt often dreams of uncle. And in my dreams I often punch and kick my aunt. It made my aunt unable to sleep all night long. In the end, she couldn't take it anymore. I just told my grandmother about this. Grandma didn't know where she learned the method from. 7 peach wood stakes were set up on the grave of my great-uncle. From that day on, Aunt was at peace. But my mom was thrown into chaos. My dad said, "Is there something wrong with Uncle's grave?" They discussed going back to their hometown to open the grave and take a look. Auntie didn't oppose it either. I went back to my hometown with my parents, then invited a few young people. Soon they dug out my uncle, but just at the moment of the switch. A plume of white smoke suddenly burst out from the coffin. Then I saw my uncle-in-law raising his hands with a pained expression. Moreover, there are many scratches on the coffin board. Everyone present was shocked by this scene. It seems that my great-uncle really wasn't completely dead when he was buried back then. Then everyone put the hand of the uncle back down and buried it again. Since then, my mom never dreamed of him again. Only Aunt occasionally dreams of uncle. This teacher often hits or scolds the students. The student expressed their inner dissatisfaction. Unexpectedly, the teacher took out a curved knife. He wanted to kill the student who disobeyed him. This is an ending to a story you wouldn't expect. It turned out that it was on this day. The teacher is leading the students in reciting the text as usual in the classroom. Just as the recitation was about to begin, someone like you, who seems to have just finished class, is now sound asleep on the desk. Seeing this, the teacher unceremoniously threw a book at the boy's head. The sudden sharp pain jolted the boy awake. Little did they know this wasn't over yet. The teacher gave the boy another beating. The boy was knocked off the desk and onto the floor. The boy knelt on the ground, begging for mercy from the teacher. Everyone nearby was stunned. But the teacher became more and more enthusiastic, stepping on the boy's head to vent her emotions. Even when leaving, she couldn't help but mock the boy, saying he is too cowardly and incompetent to be stepped on by others. The boy was already seething with anger after being beaten, suddenly stood up in anger after hearing the teacher's words. The teacher turned around to see the boy holding a small dagger. I was extremely astonished in my heart. Who would have thought the teacher became even more fierce? He directly pulled out a curved moon blade that was several times bigger than him. The boy saw that the one the teacher took out was much larger than his own. He was so frightened that he didn't dare to move. But the teacher rushed towards the boy. This left the other little friends stunned in fear. In the next second, tomato juice splattered everywhere. The boy was frightened by the scene in front of him as he opened his eyes. The teacher was bleeding from the nose and mouth just a few micrometers away from him. His face was wide open, clearly showing great pain. It turns out that behind the teacher there were suddenly many small daggers. The scene shifts. The little friends all showed expressions of disgust. Chapter 85. Safety First. If you buy a used car, make sure to ask clearly if a vehicle has been involved in a pedestrian accident. No matter how cheap, don't buy it. Lai Zhongping is a truck driver. After a long time with the sports car, I've saved a bit of money. Discussing with my wife about buying a car to drive myself. With no boss around, I have more freedom with my time. It can also earn a little more. My wife didn't oppose it either. At that time, a truck would cost at least 100,000. Even if all the money at home is taken out, it's still quite a bit short. Lai Zhongping is considering buying a better conditioned used car to drive first. After discussing it with the family, he wandered around the second-hand market since he had nothing to do. Later, he set his sights on a few cars in good condition. But whenever I ask about the price, it's always around 100,000 yuan. The car dealer, seeing Lai Zhongping's expression, understood that he was an honorable person. Just ask him how much he wants to buy it for. He can help with recommendations. But actually, Lai Zhongping just wanted to buy a car worth around 50 to 60,000 yuan. The car dealer immediately took him to see another car. It was a very new truck. He got in the car and took a look. The vehicle condition is quite good. The distance isn't that far. So I started asking the car dealer about the price. The car dealer said this car is 70,000 yuan. However, the car owner needed money urgently. Bargaining should reach his desired price. In the end, Lai Zhongping successfully bought the truck. Little did he know on his first day driving, he would have an accident. That day, his wife was cleaning the house. The phone in the room suddenly rang. He was instantly startled when he answered the phone. Lai Zhongping said over the phone that he hit someone while driving. Wen Yan's wife hurriedly put down the phone and rushed to the hospital. As soon as I arrived at the hospital, I saw Lai Zhongping surrounded by family. Fortunately, nothing happened to anyone. He left after losing some money. On the way home, his wife asked him what had happened. But Lai Zhongping himself didn't understand it either, because there was indeed someone next to him when he turned. However, there is definitely a safe distance between the car and people. Just as he turned the corner, someone called him to a stop. He said he hit someone. He got out of the car and saw it was indeed true. Someone really got knocked down by him. It was dragged several meters away. I thought it was just that I wasn't used to driving the new car. Just a few days later, another accident occurred. This time, it involved a little boy, although the child is fine. But his parents were extremely angry, just kept criticizing Lai Zhongping. At that moment, the child suddenly spoke up. He said he wasn't hit. It was dragged under the car by someone, because he was just playing by the roadside. Hearing a car approach, I deliberately hid further inside. Just as the car passed by him, suddenly a person crawled out from under the car and dragged him underneath. At that moment, the traffic police handling the accident called them into the office, because there was surveillance that recorded the entire incident, just as the vehicle passed by the boy. There is indeed a safe distance of about 2 meters. Just as the vehicle was about to pass by, the little boy seemed to be tugged by something. Then he fell under the car. After things were clarified, Lai Zhongping was released without any responsibility. Later, I learned from the traffic police that that car had hit someone before, and that person was dragged over 10 meters away. The whole person was crushed to the point of losing all semblance of humanity. So Lai Zhongping discussed it with his wife. In the end, I lost over 20,000 and sold the car again. Episode 86. Don't eat randomly. The man obtained a needle that allows him to taste any animal's meat. Just prick the animal you want to eat with a needle. Then tie it to the root of your own tongue. Whether it's pork or chicken, the flavor is that of meat from animals pierced with needles. After Lai Zhongping tasted the meat of the giraffe, he then developed even more wicked thoughts. I turned and arrived at the zoo. He took out a syringe from his coat, which was filled with items in the inner pockets. Looking at the fierce tiger in front of me, he trembled as he tied the string to the needle, threw it out randomly with a swoosh. It landed perfectly on the tiger's big face. Panicked Lai Zhongping quickly retracted the needle after succeeding. Then, acting as if nothing happened, they rushed to the next animal attraction. Seeing the animal in front of him, he felt at ease. Tuesday afternoon at the Animal Institute, it was bustling. What a great opportunity to strike. Let's just capture them all at once. He threw the needle at the monkey and the horse. All the animals in the park have been gathered. Back home, Lai Zhongping looked at the table full of syringe samples. I can finally indulge in all kinds of delicious food for the next month. Wow, this tastes awful. This is delicious. This is really delicious. But animals always have a time when they finish eating. Lai Zhongping, sitting in the chair, fell into deep thought again. What else haven't I eaten, Xiangxiang? By the way, how come this job is so poorly done? Appointment is an urgent matter indeed. Xiangxiang is just stimulating. Lai Zhongping originally wanted to try it himself, but it doesn't have any flavor. So while walking down the street, I thought about trying to poke someone. But Lai Zhongping usually doesn't interact much with people. I don't have many friends. At that moment, he saw the bun shop he used to visit from afar. Because the buns are cheap, Lai Zhongping usually goes to buy food to fill his stomach. I'm somewhat familiar with the bun shop owner. Lai Zhongping went to pretend to buy a few steamed buns. But just at the moment of payment, suddenly the boss felt as if something had pricked him. Seeing this, Lai Zhongping quickly explained, "I'm sorry, boss. It might be the ring I received." Lai Zhongping returned home, breathing heavily with anxiety. Just thinking about the scene from earlier is thrilling. He skillfully pierced the needle into the root of his tongue, then hurriedly ate a piece of chicken breast. But the flavor is like a combination of chicken, lamb, and pork. Clearly, it doesn't taste good. But Lai Zhongping just couldn't stop eating. He suddenly realized after finishing the whole plate. Fortunately, this is chicken breast. Otherwise, I really can't hold on for another 10 days. The airplane turned and shattered the plate on the ground. Then I hurried to the bathroom and threw up into the toilet. I can't keep wandering aimlessly like this. It's simply terrifying. After a week of resting and adjusting at home, finally having regained his sense of taste, Lai Zhongping suddenly felt very hungry while walking on the street. So I went to the Bayazi shop and bought a portion of Bayazi. Just as he was eating a bun at the table, Suddenly I felt something was off about the Beyazi. Isn't this the taste of human flesh? Is this guy's legend really true? I heard that they used to come and go late at night every day, and those who came in and out of his house were all sneaky and secretive. Some say he is the gang leader, hiding one's true identity by selling buns. It turns out this guy is really a pervert. Lai Zhangping ran home, covering his mouth and vomiting. Then the bun shop was reported to the police. Before long, the police arrived in time, and in the back kitchen of the bun shop a large amount of evidence was discovered. The boss was shot dead in a chaotic escape. Lai Zhangping also received several thousand yuan in cash as a reward for his tip-off. This made him secretly feel a sense of relief for a moment. After the owner of the bun shop was arrested, this matter came to a close. Until a few months later, Lai Zhangping suddenly received an invitation to his neighbor's daughter's wedding. Everyone is chatting and drinking happily. At that moment, the last dish, chicken breast, was served, but Lai Zhangping just took a small bite. Suddenly realized that the meat tasted off. Qi Lai Zhangping sat down and a man asked what was wrong. Qi Lai Zhangping immediately shouted at him, "Hurry up and catch the food. This meat has a problem." The man smirked and said, "How did you know there was a problem? I have tasted this flavor before." As soon as the words fell, Lai Zhangping realized something was wrong. But the three burly men in front of me clearly had ill intentions. This made Lai Zhangping instantly realize that these people were all accomplices. As expected. Then this group of people spoke to Lai Zhangping. "Indeed, you have tasted the flavor of human flesh before. Our boss Kai Zai Zai has taken care of you. Dan Tai, you have affected too many people's interests." The next moment, a bald man charged at Lai Zhangping with a steel knife. Then there was a loud slap. Lai Zhangping thus secretly hated the Northwest. Episode 87. This is what love should look like. He was originally human, but had to marry Yecha and have children. However, the two did not divorce due to racial issues. On the contrary, they have always loved each other deeply. Lai Zhangping was originally a businessman, often paddles out to sea alone to conduct some business. But this time he encountered a storm at sea. Lai Zhangping was powerless to resist. "I can only tie myself up in the cabin with a rope." The storm blew for a whole day and night. By the time he woke up, the storm had already stopped. Then he untied the ropes and walked out of the cabin. It has blown to an unknown place. All around are towering mountains and dense forests. Lai Zhangping wanted to see where his family was, packed some things and climbed up the cliff. On the cliff of the ratio, there are caves of various sizes. So he gathered his courage and looked into the cave. The gunpowder nearly made him cry out in shock. Inside the cave, two yetches were gnawing on raw meat. The appearance of old Lai startled them all. So the two yetch immediately chased after him, although Lai Zhangping ran desperately. But Yi Cha's movements were too fast. It didn't take long for them to catch him. Lai Zhangping was taken back to the cave. "Take out the jerky and present it in front of Yi Cha." The two leaves sniffed. Then he grabbed it and started chewing it eagerly. Unexpectedly, Yecha felt unsatisfied after finishing, and so they began to search through Lai Zhangping's bag. After not finding any more jerky, I was about to eat it again. Seeing this, old Lai quickly said with a serious expression, "There is still food on the ship. I can take them myself." Those two yetches seemed to understand his meaning. So they followed him down the mountain to the boat and ate some jerky. Then the three of them brought a pot back to the cave. Lai Zhangping first set up the pot and added some water. Then he put the leftover venison from the leaf fork into the pot. Soon the aroma of meat filled the air. The two leaves of the fork were dripping with saliva. The savory smell of the meat attracted other Yetche to join in the feast. So Yetche no longer wanted to eat lai jampe. But by nightfall Icha blocked the cave entrance with a huge rock to prevent him from escaping.